Welcome to Academy After Dark. I'm your host DB, and I'm excited to get started with Beastars, Chapter 5. Hey, it's us. So, we left off before with Legacy in his first encounter with Haru. He was just about to eat her, giving into his instincts. So, we see him here struggling. Now that he's finally caught Haru, he's kind of in conflict with himself, questioning what he's going to do with her now. He's listening to her. She's shaking, breathing heavily. She's kind of in a panic, but she can't quite move because Legosi has her restrained. He's taking note of her breathing, her moisture on his arm, her body heat, her fur, her smell, and thoughts start running through his mind of, I wonder how she would know. I can't. But what if, no, can't think about that. But he does think about it. Um, so, more or less, Legacy wants to eat Haru, but he's trying to justify to himself how, he can't do that. He's been, trying to suppress this urge for the longest time. And what's interesting is we get a little bit more insight into Legacy and, how he thinks. And that's represented by, I call it Lizard Chan. We get to see Legacy's inner Legacy. I'll call it his killer instinct because that's how I interpreted it as it was a shadowy figure, but it wasn't quite in the shape of Legacy. At least at first it wasn't. I call it Lizard Chan because in short it looks like a lizard. At first I thought it was like maybe like a little Legacy, a little pup, but it lacked wolf ears, and the tail lacked any type of fluff. It was pretty much a formless figure. Think Full Metal Alchemist, like how you have like the truth. That's kind of exactly what it was. But you know, I guess this was just a way of showing Legosi's inner id, his desire that he's been suppressing, and this is the form that it takes. These instincts that he feels are a detriment to himself, so he's been pushing them deep down. So when it appears, Legosi's id, it's like there's nothing wrong with you. You've been struggling with these feelings since you were a pup, but now you have the opportunity to indulge in your desire, and what you want is to eat that rabbit. So Legacy's trying to fight it, and we get a little bit more clarity into Legacy's inner self, his inner being. His id specifically says 17 years since he was a puppy. He's been struggling with these feelings, this instinct that he has to hunt, to kill, and it came to the forefront when he was chasing Haru, and he caught her. So now the question is, does he let her go or does he eat her? That's just my interpretation, because it wasn't really a question. As soon as the moment Haru got caught by Legacy, the only thing on his mind is just eating her on the spot. So it's interesting to note that inner Legacy, his id, his shadow, whatever you want to call it, only takes the form of Legacy himself when Legacy himself comes to the conclusion that, well, not conclusion, because it's not more so a thought process, it's just more of something that's just there, that's overpowering him, and it's shown on the page when his shadow takes, it starts out small, but then it takes a big form of a dark, shadowy Legacy, telling him to eat her, devour her whole, and it's a terrifying image, and it's definitely shown as a metaphor for how his instinct and desire is pushing him and taking control of him. And Legacy being shown as small indicates his lack of self-control at this point, so I feel like that's interesting. So Legacy, he starts digging into Haru with his claws, like an instinctual grip, trying to fight but not quite trying to rip her to pieces. And he's, well, more or less, he's gonna kill Haru right then and there. He was gonna actually do it and devour her whole. Lucky for Haru that Legosi gets interrupted by Zoe, who's coming out of the theater where where him and Louis were practicing, and distracts him for just enough time for Haru to, you know, make a break for it and get away. She couldn't believe it either, that she was actually gonna die in the way that she was going to, which is actually quite terrifying considering her in the last chapter, chapter 4, Bad Day for Rabbits. But she gets to live another day. So, Haru gets away. Something happened to Louis while he was inside of the theater. Legosi goes with Zoe inside the theater and he sees that Louis fell off the stage. Questionable how that happened, but we ended up finding out by Zoe himself, saying that it was dark, they were rehearsing their lines. Um, Apparently herbivores have a tough time seeing in the dark. I guess if they're not nocturnal. They didn't turn on the lights because, yeah, kind of think of it, where is campus security? Even, yeah, where is campus security in this school? But anyway, it was dark, and Zoe, while he was going through his lines, he was playing Odea the Water Spirit. He uh, walked a little too close to the edge, and he was gonna fall off the edge. Louis, seeing this, it was in a split second that this happened. Louis, seeing this, dashed towards him, grabbed him, and they fell together. It wasn't shown, but it was directly said. Zoe said himself that Louis fell off the stage trying to save him. Louis denies this. He said, I wasn't trying to save you. I wasn't trying to save you. I just didn't want to hear you complaining about some minor injury. Zoe says that, but you ended up but I ended up falling right on top of you. This is interesting to me for a number of reasons. From what I've seen from Louis in the past chapters, um, especially last chapter, how he broke it down to Zoe that he wasn't in it to help Zoe practice, um, just to help him. It was to make himself look good. And I always love when when the author sets up a character in a way that you find out more about them from their actions rather than from their words. And Louis is one of those characters where, kind of like a Vegeta, in a sense, where he talks a lot of crap, but in the end, you get to see what he's really made of by, you know, what he does for the people around him. Louis didn't have to save Zell. He could have just let Zell fall, and that would have been the end of it. What I find interesting is how he tried to help Zell. He's the one that hit the ground first, apparently. Zoe is the one that got cushioned by Louis, proactively shielding him from his fall. That's the impression that I got. That's what I'm led to believe by what Zoe said before Louis shut him down. So, with that, Louis, my impression of him, he has a lot more going on under the surface from this, well, to put it frankly, dickish persona that he puts off. He has a soft spot in him. I believe, from what I got, maybe an inner desire to subconsciously help people where he can. I could be wrong. This is just one person, but I find at least the one action will translate over to will be a character trait that translates over to the next chapters. That's how I feel it goes. Because he did not have to save Zoe in the way that he did, but he does, and he ends up getting hurt because of it. So, Louis tells Zoe to shut up. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Stop talking before I skew you on my horn. So, his gruff demeanor is definitely still there, but it says something that he took the fall for, literally, for Zoe. So, it kind of mirrors what was happening with Legosi outside. how Legosi was struggling with himself outside, with with his inner darkness, his inner demon, I guess, and Louis on the inside, um, kind of let something slip, kind of let a little bit of himself slip through the cracks of this armor that he puts up. That's interesting. Whereas Legosi actively tries to suppress himself from what we learned, Louis also does the same thing in a different way. So that's how I feel that they're kind of like perfect foils for each other. Um, and I can't wait to see how the relationship develops. Because just as Legosi gets there, Louis, I feel like Legosi is going to be a person for Louis to lean on, just like he did in this chapter, both literally and figuratively, and vice versa. It feels that how they were set up, both of them have something that each of them, that both needs from each other. Whereas Legosi is reserved and quiet, as he was set up in, the following chapters. Um, Louis is very assertive, aggressive, um, hot tempered, outgoing, all that Legosi's not. So anyway, he thanks Legosi for standing sentinel and asks if did everything go okay outside. Legosi says, yeah, everything was fine out there. Nothing happened. Something most definitely did happen. And he discreetly wipes the blood from his claws from when he scratched Haru onto his pants. So Zoe is a little bit worried that Louis injured his legs and he might not be able to perform at tomorrow's rehearsal. Seeing that um, the perfectionist that Louis was from the following chapters, he's most definitely going to perform on an injured leg. Um, so I wonder if that's going to have some consequence to it. Maybe the injury gets worse and worse. Maybe the show fails because something happens. So, this play has been set up to be a really big deal. And I hope it opens up some more character moments, because even though it was very discreet, and I felt like Legosi and his big, inner secret, his big reveal of what he's dealing with, kind of overshadowed what was going on inside, and Louis's moment was definitely much more discreet. I feel like that's brilliant setup for what may or may not happen down the line. I definitely hope it's expanded on. Because I don't know, Louis, he's relatable in a sense. Not quite there yet, but I feel like there are definitely layers to his character that I want to see explored. We got a little bit of Legosi. Don't really know the why though. The why Legosi feels this way. And my question is, them being an animals and them being in an animalistic society, how does society how does society encourage does society encourage carnivores to, I would imagine they do, because I still don't know what they eat yet. So how does society help carnivores channel their inner predatory instincts and their urges to hunt and eat? Most animals, actually, yeah, the majority of animals are, you know, driven by the instinct for food. But even if you were to give them an alternate diet, they would still have those cravings. And what would happen if an animal was exposed to something like blood, or or I don't know, like a dead carcass, like someone died? How would they suppress it? Because it was interesting to note that Inner Lugosi said he's been dealing with this since he was a puppy, and you have animals in this school who are both carnivore and herbivore. living together day in and day out, going to classes together. So that's definitely something I would hope that they explore later on down the line. So the last thing we see is Legosi. He's in the washroom, back at the dorm, presumably. Um, he helped Louis back to his place, I'm assuming. And right before he leaves, he looks at himself in the mirror, and he sees Shadow Lugosi still there. This time in wolf form. He sees himself, but he's much more vicious. He looks like a beast, a monster. I feel that's a callback to Haru's chapter, and I feel like at least the three of these characters are being set up in very different ways. Louis on the more discreet end right now. I can't say much about him, but I feel like it's connecting both Legosi and Haru in a way. For when Haru looked at herself in the mirror, chapter 4, we just see Haru as how she sees herself, Haru, with, undertones of how she really views herself. But with Legosi, when he looks in the mirror, we see we see a monster, which is representative of how Legosi views himself. He views himself as a monster that's been suppressing his instincts and maybe suffering because of it. Because while he had Haru in his grasp, inner Legosi was taunting him and said, I know how you really feel. You don't feel regret. You don't feel shame from this. You feel joy from this. You feel joy from having caught your prey. Now you eat your prey and you'll love that. That's something that's just innate. You have a say over your innate, over your instincts, but in this case, what happens if you have your instincts suppressed for so long where you don't know how to essentially handle yourself? I would like to see more of how they deal with that. So, Legosi busts the mirror. He just completely shatters it, which is telling about his character. From my takeaway from this, Legosi hates himself. There's undertones of self-hatred in Legosi. That was my takeaway, at least, because whereas Haru just looked in the mirror, Legosi, in a way, he kind of just flat out rejects what's inside of him, represented by him just straight up breaking the mirror. It goes back to that song in Mulan, what does my reflection show? Who I am on the inside. And if that's how Legosi views himself on the inside, as a monster, I can't wait to see where that goes. I have my suspicions about Tim's killer. That was brought up in chapter 1. But with the information that's being presented with Legosi, and how he's struggling with his killer instinct, kind of put him a couple points up on my suspect list. But even then, I still don't think it's him. At least not yet. I feel like it'll be a little too obvious. But I don't think it's him. I don't know. I get the impression this was a first time thing, maybe. We'll see. But that was my impression from the chapter. I can't wait to see where it goes next. I want to see how Legosi deals with this. Haru got away, so if she's going to be a recurring character from how they set her up like this, how is Legosi going to deal with the fact that something happened to her? Will she go to campus security, the police? Are there going to be repercussions for Legosi's actions? There's a couple routes the story can take. Will they meet again? Will they go to the same school? No, there are a couple routes this can take, and I'm curious to know where it goes. So I can't wait for the next chapter, chapter 6, and yeah, I'll see you then. Definitely an interesting series. Hope you enjoyed it.